there's product here. And this is where you end up, right here. If you can communicate this product, you can make money off the product.
So before I begin the guide, a massive thank you for 2,000 subscribers. It's only been 3 months and I've already doubled my sub count, which is insane. A thank you to everyone who also upvoted my 20,000 word verdict guide as well. Since there is quite a sizable 2 to 3 week gap between when I upload my guides, I've started streaming on Twitch as an attempt to do it weekly. I'm quickly interjecting right now to say that, if you haven't noticed already, the audio is very damp and sounds a little blown out at the high ends. I've tried redoing the audio, adding effects, trying a different software, or even switching to a new project, and the audio just doesn't change. As you can see on the screen, there's a stark difference in the dynamic range before and after my mic started having issues. I recently put up a community poll explaining all of this, and it looks like people want me to use a TTS bot for this one and only occasion. I still hope that you guys enjoy the guides.
Sombra's weapon Lil Uzi Vert. Makes Sombra shooter SMG at 1200 rounds per minute, dealing 8 damage per shot with an ammo capacity of 60 rounds. Aside from mechanical reload animation cancels, the main usage will be farming tanks in ranked from your maximum fall off range to farm ult charge as fast and as safely as possible. You can even be standing as far as 20 meters away poking down an off tank with the majority of your shots landing. Aside from that, you'll be using your SMG to follow up on fast dives, which I will go through thoroughly in the macro section of this guide. Sombra's first ability, B-Tech Engineer Teleporter. Makes Sombra toss out a beacon in which she can return to it at any time. It has a projectile speed of 25 meters per second, and a 6-second cooldown. Starting off with a small bit of tech, you can throw your Translocator directly vertically in the air, to gain a higher angle for a hack.
Really good hack tech. If you can't get a hack on somebody, throw the Translocator up, translocate at its peak, hack on your fallback down. I love it. You didn't really need to do it there, but the tech overall is pretty dope.
The biggest and most obvious problem with Sombra's Translocator is that players often don't know how or where to place it. Here's Jayne giving and explaining an example of Translocator placement on Nepal Shrine.
So A, I put it kind of like on my side of the point. B, I put it on the high ground. Or C, I put it right on the health pack. So the thing is, if you place it on the Translocator, right? So if we hack this and we place the actual Translocator, and we can fight. Suddenly we get attacked or something like this. If we translocate, we are out of the fight. If you place your Translocator here, and you're fighting, suddenly you get primaried, you're out of the fight. So what you want to be doing instead is giving yourself options. So if your Translocator is on a statue like this, you're fighting, or you drop to the health pack if you need it. Give yourself options.
Building on this idea further, here's Spirlo adding a bit more nuance to this concept.
If you're going to throw your Translocator late, is at least have the dignity to throw it up here to where it's not as easy for the Sombra or Lucy to break it. Because if you're placing it in a sightline where they can see it from main and they can break it from main. So they don't even need to send their Sombra to go break your Translocator. They could just loose their sends one volley, your Translocator is broken, and then you're screwed.
Moving on to broader usage, you'll be wanting to use Translocator for added vertical mobility for rollouts and to access high grounds, especially against brawl comps, which I will get onto in the second to last section of this guide. Sombra's second ability, B-Tech Spy Cloak. Makes Sombra turn invisible with a movement speed buff of 50% alongside a potentially infinite duration, and a cooldown of 6 seconds. In terms of tech, here's Fitzy explaining the Invis cancel prior to ulting.
When going for an EMP is to use stealth, throw your Translocator in, decloak, then translocate an EMP. This will get rid of the delay when you try to EMP after you translocate, and it will also play the voice line of decloaking at your original location instead of in the middle of the entire enemy line.
In terms of usage, there are two main uses. The first is mobility, and the second is scouting. Dealing with the former, use the added speed buff from Invis to perform rollouts as quick as possible, alongside making rotations to high ground and getting in position for farming, or to getting a kill, faster. With the latter, you typically want to scout heroes and positions. I will get onto communication later on, but as soon as you see the enemy team, you should call out every hero, which may influence on how your tanks path. With the former, an example of scouting a rotation would be on Hanamura first defense, seeing whether the enemy team would rotate to high ground, through the mini health pack room on the right side, or all the way across coast. Sombra's third ability, Hacker Man. Makes Sombra temporarily disable all active and passive abilities from one enemy for 5 seconds, with a range of 15 meters, a cast time of 0.65 seconds, alongside a standard cooldown of 8 seconds. In terms of tech, Similar to Mercy's beam, there is a small grace period where your hack can extend beyond 15 meters. In order to do this consistently, pull away from your 15-meter range as soon as you see your fourth purple string extend from your fingertips to pull off a hack at a slightly longer and safer range. In terms of usage, a lot of Sombras struggle with pushing advantage onto landing a hack onto a target, but as Mineral elaborates on here, every hack you get may not always be an instant kill or receive much, if any value at all.
Even though he does land an early hack, EM are already at an HP disadvantage, and there's no way for them to close this large of a distance before Kaiser takes cover behind the pillar. EM is able to set up Doa in a power position above the point to farm EMP, but is naturally losing out in the brawl.
In broader terms, there are two main uses of Sombra's hack. The first is to hack to farm ult charge. An example would be hacking a Hog or D.Va and farming them from range during your farm cycles. And a comp that would benefit this playstyle is a Brawl or Double Shield comp. They either have limited range or a lack of mobility, which doesn't fit the latter type of hack, which is to hack to kill. This suits a fast dive comp with hacking squishy targets, or rushing down tanks with a Reaper. Sombra's passive ability, B-Tech Widow Walls, makes Sombra see enemies through walls who have under 50% HP. The main way you'll utilize this passive is by calling out enemies who are half HP or under, which becomes more important the more coordinated your team environment is. Sombra's ultimate, Hackerman 2000, makes Sombra discharge electromagnetic energy in a 15-meter radius, taking 0.35 seconds to activate, lasting 5 seconds, and disables all shield health. There is a little bit of tech with EMP in that you gain a small vertical boost from activating EMP, which should primarily be used to strafe onto high ground in case you throw your translocator in the air prior to you using EMP. In terms of who to prioritize an EMP if you can't get all 6 members, here's Jayne explaining the nuances between hacking tanks and supports.
If they have support ultimates, you go for supports so that they can't use them. If they have no support ultimates, you use the EMP on tanks so that they can't use primal or bomb to sustain themselves. They also have no mobility and no defensive abilities that they can use to protect themselves. If you can't get everyone, who you EMP depends on the status of the support ultimates.
Keep in mind that Lucios and Zens will commonly hide from EMP to counter it afterwards. In order to prevent this, simply scout or hack the enemy Zen or Lucio to make sure that they can't use their ult in response to yours. In a bunker or a stationary comp, you can also use EMP defensively to cancel ultimates such as an aggressive Lucio beat, a barrage, a Sigma flux, a whole hog, a high noon or a coalescence. Although keep in mind that EMP is not a direct counter to nano bleed, hence you want to be playing proactive instead of reactive against a win condition like that. Here's Spilo explaining the sheer importance of timing an EMP correctly.
I'm about to head out.
Let's talk. Your job is to EMP enemies where your team can go and kill them. You are playing in a team environment, and you have managed to find a way to EMP 2 people in nearly inaccessible locations, instead of simply waiting for them to walk out and then EMP them. I get it. Your team is like, they have EMP, we don't have B, we gotta go fast. But this is not the type of fast. If you want to hide on point and let them drop and then speed boost out from point and EMP them once they've dropped, fine.
This may look simple, but if both Sombras have EMP, then you have to EMP first in order to win the team fight. Moving on to the final section of this guide, positioning, composition and communication. In terms of communication, which goes hand in hand with scouting, here are the 3 precise steps to nail this down in a fast dive scrim. Firstly, what are you hacking? This may seem insignificant, but saying I'm hacking hog will ensure that your team doesn't focus down the wrong target. Secondly, where are you hacking? This isn't the most vital call out, but if your tanks are hiding from poke damage and awaiting your call, the extra half a second of delay on where to dive could cause unnecessary poke damage. Thirdly, when are you hacking? A simple countdown is optimal, although a call out such as hacking now is also decent, but can leave your main tank in the dark about when to engage. In terms of Sombra's positioning, here's Mineral explaining Mayhem's rotations to power positions in order to utilize farming checkpoints.
However, BKB rotates back to that power position, and even though Washington amps up the tempo and pushes Florida's frontline, the Zarya and the Sombra both maintain high ground positions as well as a crossfire. This allows the 2 primary damage dealers of Florida to farm freely as reflected in their ult charge. BKB's Translocator was placed too far away from his desirable position, and he put himself out of the fight for an extended period of time. He could have either had his Translocator closer to that position, or potentially even have used the Translocator to jump up there once Washington dropped. In the first round, this also happened and proved more costly. Here, Zarya got booped down from the high ground and BQB placed his Translocator far away from the fight. He also didn't take the time to rotate up to high ground while Washington was waiting out a hack and recharging resources. As a result, the Justice were able to take turns to mark him, just like we saw in the earlier Kingzero example. They also forced him to kite around the corner, out of range of the rest of his team. Being outside the LOS to receive Armor Pack and Harmony Orb, he was forced to translocate out, and Washington cleaned things up, having negated all the threats. Had BQB taken the high ground position, it would have been much harder to accomplish, and he likely would have been able to farm his EMP in time.
Here's Spilo explaining how to position a Sombra in accordance to a brawl comp.
I'm also not a huge fan of your positioning inside here. Chat, where should he be instead of here? Obviously, this is not an angle standing behind shield. You want to play an off angle to where it takes you very little time to get there, and your team can heal you from the off angle. Behind them up top on window, you could play here. I would say not even here. You don't have to position this far. You position right here. You can get Lucio aura, you can get Moira aura. You have full off angle, hard off angle on tanks. They cannot hide behind a corner from your damage. If they do, they run into Zarya damage. And chat, he tries to do that, but he does it on the wrong side.
The general rule of thumb for Sombra positioning is as follows. Firstly, take off angles and high ground at engagement. Secondly, this is because cooldowns are used. And thirdly, this means that attention is being drawn elsewhere for you to get away with your off angle. A quick thing to mention is that a lot of Sombras take off angles too early or too late, and end up leaving their team in a 5v6 in the actual engagement. In terms of composition, Sombra is an extremely versatile character, and can fit into almost any team comp. The first example is a hack fist dive, which is a form of the general fast dive comp as provided by Jayne.
Sombra, once Ana moves through what you're considering the kill box, which is where your tanks have access to and your Doomfist has access to, you simply call it, give a countdown, and then everyone dives in. One of the big things here is that since you want this dive to be so clean, you don't want the tanks to be kind of like scouting their own dive. So you have to trust that your Sombra is giving you accurate information. Sombra, call it out. I want to see a very coordinated landing on this Ana.
Ana's coming through main. Come. She's poking. No. Sombra now.
Better. Winston still arrived before Doomfist. And Sombra, you want to be as large of a crossfire as possible. So your Translocator is like over on the point somewhere or something like this. So if you're on a crossfire behind, if the opponent attempts to like tank the dive by speeding out, they'll be speeding into you, giving you better access onto hacks and damage. So Sombra, make sure you're decloaking at as large of a crossfire angle as possible. If you do a 3-2-1, for example, like if you say now, some people's movements take longer. For example, if Doomfist is doing an untargeted seismic slam, he needs to go early so he'll arrive at the right time. So doing a 3-2-1 allows everyone to kind of adjust for when they are moving. Like a D.Va goes later because a D.Va has to follow Winston. Doomfist, depending on his rollout, needs to arrive at a specific time, and Lucio needs to know, who he's speeding around.
The second comp is the general fast dive, as Spilo briefly covers in terms of win condition.
So they walk out, they dive, Hog gets off. Boy, they're not even capping point, they're playing to kill. Okay, interesting. Sato against splits, Hog should die here. Hog should die. There's the hack, Hog will die. So now all they have to do is survive and go to point, which they will do.
I recently made a document about fast dive for my team Dystopia, which I've linked down below if you're curious about how to run fast dive. The third comp is a type of counter dive, which is diving second in response to the enemy dive. Jayne walked through step by step a possible solo strat from the POV of Sombra, with previous concepts such as translocator placement tied into it as well.
Just because you are Sombra doesn't mean that a normal healer can't heal you. This is one of the things that we saw happen in Contenders a few times in the very early days, is that we'd see like the translocator over here or something like that, but then as the dive came up from main, the Sombra could hack one of the dive targets and then go for a support and then translocate up and stay in the fight. You have other healers on your team. You do not have to get all of your healing from health pack. And the higher you go, it's going to take you out of the fight for too long.
The last type of comp that I'll cover is slow dive. This primarily revolves around farming imp and playing slow. This slow pace is also not too dissimilar to a fast dive mirror, as neither team have the ability to dive each other. If playing a Sombra mirror in either of these comps, whoever farms and uses imp first wins. Well, that's it for the guide. If you enjoyed, don't forget to subscribe, and if this video also helped to raise your IQ, be sure to share it with your friends to also raise theirs. Until next time.